Space Agency released the data from ExoMars camera on one of its orbiters of Mars, and it looks like they detected the interstellar visitor 3I Atlas that was discovered back on July 1st, 2025 this year, and looked rather anomalous. The object is quite large, and it's also aligned in its path with a plane of the planets around the sun. So it's quite intriguing. It offers us a gift, a rare gift of a highly visible object that many of our space probes can look at. And right now, a few days ago, on October 3rd, it passed near Mars within 29 million kilometers, and this camera was able to detect it. And what we see is a ball of light with a slight extension, it doesn't look like a typical comet where you see a beautiful tail of dust stretching away from the direction of the sun. So it looks still quite anomalous. It's similar to the image we obtained from the Hubble Space Telescope on July 21st, which was enigmatic because there was an extension of the image in the direction of the sun, as if there is a jet that is luminous in the direction leading to the sun rather than away from the sun, the way we see for comets. So we see now that it passed near Mars, and there will be much better data. The best is yet to come from the HiRISE camera on board NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. The data was taken, but because of the government shutdown, we haven't seen it. That particular camera is 0.5 meter in diameter and can give us 30-kilometer resolution of 3I Atlas, this new interstellar object. And that could potentially tell us how big it is, because the amount of sunlight that is reflected from it will set the brightest pixel in the image that we get from NASA. So everyone is eagerly awaiting that, because it will be the best, the highest resolution image we have. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we should all see what the data shows. And in the coming months, this object will pass close to another mission called JUICE on its way to Jupiter. It will also, that will happen during November. But just before that, on October 29th, it will pass closest to the sun. And then it will get warmed up. And the question is, how will it respond to this extreme environment close to the sun? And then on December 19th, 2025, just before Christmas, it's supposed to be closest to Earth at a distance that is roughly 1.8 times the Earth-Sun separation. And after that, on March 16th, 2026, it will come close to Jupiter, within 54 million kilometers from Jupiter. And there is a spacecraft orbiting Jupiter called Juno that we hope that NASA will use to learn more about it. And, altogether, it's very exciting, because we've never thought about the potential implications of finding an object that big that could be something other than a rock, an icy rock. Just imagine that it was a technological object that selected this orbit to be aligned with the planets around the sun for a reason. It was designed by some intelligence, and we are not prepared for such a visit. And perhaps the wake-up call from 3I Atlas, this object, will alert us to be more aware of the potential risks. And I wrote actually a white paper to the United Nations that I sent last week with the hope that they will establish an international committee that would analyze future data on other interstellar objects like 3I Atlas that we will get in the decade, and examine whether any of them shows anomalies that might be alien technology.
Professor Loeb, I so love your passion for this topic and your excitement on it. I don't know if I could have taken your class at 8 a.m. when I was in college, but tell me a little bit how this government shutdown, I think all things come, full circle, how the government shutdown actually affects it. You mentioned that we haven't seen the images yet from NASA because of the shutdown, but how exactly?
Yeah, so in fact, some people ask me whether that might indicate that there is evidence for alien intelligence out there because NASA is delaying the release of data. I said to them in response that this shutdown and the delay is not a sign of extraterrestrial intelligence, but more a sign of terrestrial stupidity. And with respect to why I'm so excited, the question of are we alone is the most romantic question in science. And if we ever find a partner in our cosmic neighborhood, it could give a new meaning to our existence, the way you go on a blind date and find a partner. What I really hope is that whoever comes on the other side of the table when we go on a blind date with some alien technology, that would not be a blind date with a serial killer. That's really the main issue here. And we should be aware of a black swan event where a very low probability encounter could have devastating consequences. So as of now, my recommendation is to establish an observatory in the northern hemisphere, not just the southern hemisphere, that like we have in terms of the Rubin Observatory in Chile, so that we can see the entire skies. That will cost us about $1 billion. Because the Rubin Observatory in Chile cost both the Department of Energy and the National Science Foundation about $1 billion. So if we have another one that is not just monitoring the southern sky, but also the northern sky, we'll have a full alert system covering the entire sky. And then if we ever have a verified encounter, then of course the level of investment should rise by a factor of 1,000, because that's the level of investment we have every year for the military budgets. And when there is a threat from outside the solar system, it could pose a serious matter for the international financial system. So it definitely requires more attention.
This gives a whole new outlook on men are from Mars or women are from Venus. It gives a whole new perspective on all of that when you talk about dating. But when I hear you say a delay, I'm wondering how delays factor into NASA's schedule of things that they are trying to achieve in the next several years.
Yeah, so the instruments took data that we know for sure. For example, the high-rise camera on board the NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter collected the data at the right time on October 2nd when the 3I Atlas came close to Mars. So we know the data was taken. And there are people analyzing or processing the data in universities. And then they cannot communicate the data to the public because of the shutdown. So basically, we have no access. The data is not made public, even though there is competition with the European Space Agency, with the Chinese Space Agency. So it's rather unfortunate that the shutdown is simply not allowing us to know what the data looks like, except for the research team that has access to it. They are not allowed to communicate it publicly until NASA will come back on its feet. So that's the implication of the NASA shutdown. And of course, funding and other activities within NASA are also being halted as a result of that. So altogether, it's not really good for science to have this shutdown. And my hope is that in the coming days, this political problem will be resolved.
Professor Avila, Harvard, thank you so much. My head is spinning, but we appreciate what you do.